Imagine being so universally unpopular that a random radio caller compares you to the kid at school nobody wants to sit with at lunch, and a veteran broadcaster absolutely loses it laughing because the analogy is just too perfect. That's precisely what happened to Keir Starmer this week when Nick Ferrari's LBC show turned into an accidental roast session, complete with the host giggling like a schoolboy at the sheer brutal accuracy of it all. We're talking a caller who switched from Labour to the Lib Dems. The Lib Dems, people, calling out the Prime Minister for being everyone's least favorite person in the political playground. And honestly, when Nick Ferrari can't keep it together on air because your description of the PM is that savage, you know you've struck comedic gold. So let's dive into this beautiful moment of radio chaos, unpack why it resonated so hard, and figure out how Keir Starmer ended up being the political equivalent of eating lunch alone in the bathroom stall. The caller who sparked this whole thing is genuinely fascinating because they represent a slice of the electorate that Labour absolutely cannot afford to lose. Born in 1998, so we're talking mid-20s, someone who's voted a few times but isn't some ancient political dinosaur stuck in their ways. This is exactly the demographic Labour needs: young enough to care about progressive issues, old enough to have life experience and responsibilities. And this person, who describes themselves as a Labour voter for years, just walked away. Didn't go conservative, didn't stay home and protest, went liberal Democrat because they reckon the Lib Dems are somehow more authentically working class right now than Labour. Let that sink in for a second. The Liberal Democrats, the party that's been a political punchline since the tuition fees betrayal over a decade ago. When voters think the Lib Dems are more trustworthy and representative of working people than Labour, something has gone catastrophically wrong. The caller's reasoning is what makes this so cutting. They don't accuse Starmer of being incompetent or corrupt or even particularly ideological. The charge is much simpler and somehow worse. He betrays everyone. People on the right, people on the left. Doesn't matter where you stand, Starmer will find a way to let you down. It's almost impressive in its consistency. Most politicians alienate one side or the other, that's just the nature of having positions on things. But Starmer's apparently managed to upset literally everyone simultaneously, which takes a special kind of talent. The caller's punchline lands like a brick through a window. He's like the kid in school who is no one's friend at the moment. Brutal. Simple, devastatingly accurate. And this is where Nick Ferrari absolutely loses it. You can hear him scoff first, that initial reaction of, "Oh, this is good," and then he just starts giggling. Properly giggling. Not the polite chuckle you give to be professional, but genuine laughter because the image is too perfect. Ferrari's been in broadcasting for decades. He's interviewed prime ministers and grilled politicians. He's seen it all. But this one caller's playground analogy breaks through his professional composure entirely. As the caller continues with, "He's just annoying everyone," Ferrari can't contain himself and adds his own twist. He's certainly in the corner of the playground and no one wants to talk to him. It's the kind of pylon that happens when someone says something so obviously true that everyone just has to join in. What makes this moment so delicious is that it's not some calculated political attack from an opposition MP with an axe to grind. It's not a think piece from a hostile newspaper. It's just a regular person calling a radio show and spontaneously delivering one of the most perfect political put-downs in recent memory. There's something very British about it too. We don't go for grand sweeping condemnations or dramatic rhetoric. We compare the Prime Minister to the unpopular kid at school. Everyone has a little laugh, and somehow that cuts deeper than any formal criticism ever could. It's devastating precisely because it's so relatable. We've all known that kid. We've all seen the person who tried too hard to please everyone and ended up trusted by no one. And now that person is running the country. The playground metaphor works on multiple levels. School playgrounds are brutal social ecosystems where authenticity matters more than anything else. Kids can smell a fake a mile away. If you're trying to be everyone's friend by telling each group what they want to hear, you get found out instantly and nobody respects you. Starmer's political career has been built on strategic repositioning, leading the charge for a second referendum when that was popular with party members, then pivoting hard away from that during the leadership campaign, then shifting again when he became leader, then moderating further for the general election. It's textbook triangulation, the kind of politics that consultants love and actual humans find deeply off-putting. You can't point to a core set of principles that Starmer will defend regardless of political cost, because the whole brand is flexibility and pragmatism, which sounds good in theory, but in practice makes you look like you don't believe in anything. The caller's specific complaints about betraying both left and right is particularly interesting because it gets to the heart of Starmer's impossible balancing act. The left feels betrayed because he ran for Labour leader on a relatively progressive platform, got their votes, then immediately started purging left-wing members and abandoning policies they cared about. The right feels betrayed because he positioned himself as sensible and moderate, someone who wouldn't rock the boat, but then delivered a budget that raised taxes significantly and made policy decisions that businesses hate. Meanwhile, the center just feels confused because the messaging changes so often, they're not sure what this government actually stands for beyond "we're not the Tories." When nobody across the entire political spectrum feels like you're on their side, that's not successful coalition building. That's just being universally disappointing. The reaction to this interview clip is almost as entertaining as the original moment. Social media went absolutely wild, which is what always happens when someone articulates what everyone's thinking, but nobody's quite said that perfectly yet. One person declared that things will only get worse under this abysmal Labour government, which is the kind of confident pessimism that Britain does better than anywhere else. Another claims Starmer is the most hated prime minister we've ever had, which is quite a statement considering we've had some properly unpopular PMs over the years. Liz Truss crashed the economy in about 6 weeks. Mary May got utterly humiliated trying to deliver Brexit. Brown never recovered from being blamed for the financial crisis. Anthony Eden had Suez. So saying Starmer's the most hated ever is hyperbolic, but also tells you something about the intensity of current feeling. But then you get the pushback, which is equally revealing. Someone responds asking for evidence of why Starmer is rightly hated, demanding explanation and justification, which is the natural response of someone who either supports Labour or at least doesn't think the criticism is fair, which is valid. Hatred is a strong word, and governments should be judged on policy outcomes, not just vibes and popularity contests. Starmer inherited an absolute mess: public services on their knees, the economy stagnant, international instability, a party that had been out of power for 14 years. Expecting miracles in 6 months is unreasonable. The counter-argument is that nobody asked him to promise miracles, but he did anyway, and now people are holding him to his own standard. Then you get the person who says this exchange perfectly sums up why they no longer listen to LBC except for James O'Brien, which is fascinating because it reveals the tribal nature of media consumption now. O'Brien is very clearly left-leaning, very critical of Brexit and the Conservative Party. Very much not someone who'd find Starmer criticism funny unless it was coming from the left for not being progressive enough. The implication is that Ferrari and his show are too willing to platform criticism of Labour, too ready to laugh at Starmer's expense, and therefore not worth listening to. It's the classic "I only want to hear opinions I already agree with" approach to media, which is understandable, but also kind of depressing. If we can't even listen to criticism of politicians we support, we end up in echo chambers where accountability disappears. What's remarkable about this whole situation is how quickly public sentiment can shift. 6 months ago, Labour won a landslide, absolute demolition of the Conservatives, massive parliamentary majority, the kind of mandate that should set you up for a decade of comfortable governance. And yet, here we are, half a year later, with radio callers getting massive laughs by comparing the Prime Minister to the friendless kid in the playground. That's not normal political opposition. That's genuine grassroots contempt. It suggests Labour's honeymoon period didn't just end early, it basically never existed. They went from electoral triumph to widespread disappointment almost overnight, which is quite the achievement. Part of the problem is expectations management. When you campaign on being completely different from the previous government, on restoring trust and competence, on fixing everything that's broken, people actually expect you to do those things. And when you immediately start governing like you're terrified to make anyone angry, simultaneously making everyone angry, the gap between promise and reality becomes a chasm. The winter fuel payment cut alienated pensioners and the left. The farmers' inheritance tax upset rural communities and the right. The constant U-turns make everyone question whether the government has any idea what they're doing. The refusal to commit to anything concrete makes people wonder what the point of this government even is. The playground metaphor works on multiple levels. School playgrounds are brutal social ecosystems where authenticity matters more than anything else. Kids can smell a fake a mile away. If you're trying to be everyone's friend by telling each group what they want to hear, you get found out instantly and nobody respects you. Starmer's political career has been built on strategic repositioning, leading the charge for a second referendum when that was popular with party members, then pivoting hard away from that during the leadership campaign, then shifting again when he became leader, then moderating further for the general election. It's textbook triangulation, the kind of politics that consultants